let's talk about advice. Advice is a funny thing, man. And as a person who has taken the liberty and who has took it upon himself to hand out advice all the time, I want to talk about this, and more importantly, I want to share that this is something that I've learned a lot on. So, I've always prided myself on giving good advice, you know? I'm that friend who's rational and logical, and I have enough emotional intelligence and empathy to put myself in your position and then listen to what my friend has to say and then offer good advice. That's always been my MO. And recently, I am finding myself on the other end of that stick. Things have happened in life that have required me to reach out to others and get input, get advice. What would you do if you were me? And boy, oh boy, has that been interesting to be on that receiving end instead of being the advice guru, handing out advice like I'm Steve Nash with it. So I basically come to the conclusion that there's two realities. One is this reality in which by now we have all consumed enough self-help books, enough podcasts. We've all gathered enough data and quote-unquote knowledge to know what's right and to know what's wrong. Everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people now are experts in narcissism, in gaslighting, in toxic relationships. And they're also very quick to label things as such. So when somebody comes to us asking for advice, we're kind of quick to go, hey, you know, if you're telling me XYZ is present in this situation that you're describing, it means you gotta do ABC, right? And most of the time, in a theoretical context, this is correct. So the first thing I want to say is I have found that it has become increasingly easy to give good advice because we're all operating within the same social, psychological, pseudo-therapeutic, spiritual framework that is consistently and constantly being reinforced by our social media feed. So that's like a long-winded and complicated way of saying we're all following the same influencers and memes and people with authority that are telling us how to behave and how to act in certain situations and what we should do when treated a certain way by people. So we all passed the test. We all know what to do now, right? And so when somebody comes to us, we all know what to say. But I have found that following this quote-unquote book-smart theoretical way of living as a guideline does not really translate to the real world. So as I was saying, there's two realities. The first one is this reality I just described, and then the second reality is the real fucking world. And if you consistently apply these theoretical frameworks of how to live, how to treat or communicate with your ex, how to deal with narcissistic and toxic and gaslighting people, you know what's going to happen? more often than not, you're gonna end up cutting people out. Cutting people out and cutting people off is the very sickness of our generation. And when I say our generation, I don't even necessarily mean my generation, because I'm 36. I'm pushing 30, late 30s. I'm also talking about the people that are like in their 20s now. But you know, I feel like mentally I can definitely relate to that. Because I'm not mature. Mentally I'm like 26. I'm a kid. So what I'm trying to say is we are building a generation based on one's ability to cut people out. We're cutting you off. You're toxic. You're gaslighting me. You're out. Now, that's all fine. That's great. And there's definitely a huge ego boost that comes with doing that initially. But I have something to tell you. It may come as a surprise, but the older you'll get, you will find that the well that seems to spawn an infinite amount of new friends, new partners, new relationships is actually not infinite. It's quite finite. That well will dry up. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will. I promise you it will. And one day you'll look around and you'll find yourself having no more people to cut off. We need to understand and we need to realize that the easiest thing to do and the path of least resistance is to cut people off. You're not a badass. You're not necessarily a strong person if you have that ability. And to me, it feels like a lot of people are confusing that. They think if they had the power to stand up for themselves and establish boundaries and say no, it's like, yes, you're doing a good thing. You're growing. You're strong. You're powerful, and it becomes addicting. Ooh, that sweet addiction to cutting people off, that hits differently. Cut some people off on a Saturday night, Sunday morning, Monday night. But once again, you might want to reconsider that strategy. I have found myself in a position in which I was asking for a lot of advice, and everybody gave me the exact advice that I was expecting. But the thing about that is, those people, after giving you their little input and their advice, do you think they're still thinking about that, or you, for that matter? 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, 30 minutes later, a day later? Plot twist! They don't. But you are still there. 1 day later, 2 days later, 3 days later, you are in that position because you followed that advice. You cut some people off, you established boundaries, and now you find yourself alone and suffering. And in some cases that might have been the right move, but in a lot of cases, other people's advice and other people's opinions and beliefs of what you should do to be a better you, all of those things are not going to keep you company at night. They're not going to hug you at night. They're not going to go out with you on a Sunday afternoon. You'll find yourself alone. We need to understand that we're living in a very imperfect world with a lot of imperfect people. And instead of condemning people immediately and putting a stamp on them and cutting them off, we need to be more empathetic. We need to be more understanding. And we need to give more second chances. And we need to keep trying. And we need to build and nurture relationships. And really take care of them. Nurture them. Like a seed. And not just immediately run away at the first sight of adversity or struggle. That's what I've learned. Do not fall in the trap of thinking life is a theoretical test. Alright? Don't look at it too theoretically. Think about what will make you happy at the end of the day. Which decision will give you the biggest chance of actual happiness at the end of your day? Instead of running to execute the advice that came from your friends and to show them how mature and wise you are and how strong you are for following through on that. So give it a thought, guys. Think about this, please. I know I have been doing a lot of that. And don't mistake this for me saying never take advice and don't be rational and don't be logical. Just use advice as another piece of data for you to base your decision on, instead of using it as an absolute truth and a guideline to your life. That's all. Thank you for watching. Comment below what you think. Give me your thoughts. I would love to hear. Peace out.